Welcome, everyone, to Hacking Infinity, where we're actually playing the Eschaton. Often in this time slot, I just work on this game, but today we're going to start a campaign, and I am super excited about it. Uh, with me today uh, is Adam, also known as Dark Lavender Void. How are you, Adam?
It's a really good screen name that I made very late uh, in my online presence. So I'm a lot prouder of it than most people are of their own screen names. Like some people have weird screen names, like with a bunch of letters and numbers after them, and they're not super proud of it. Anyway,
Sephiroth Tor 20XX.
Yeah, no, I did way better. I did way better from the beginning, but this is perfect. I'm making a playtech called Mortally Bankrupt. You might have heard of it. It's the weird Lovecraftian house hunters one. Yep, I do that, and it's eating my
Classic
life.
trope.
Yeah. With some reality show thrown in. Which
Yep.
I love how that adds to the weirdness of the Lovecraftian element.
It's very twisty.
So also with us is a Dazer, also known as Posh Panda. The
Yes.
Posh Panda.
The
How are you
Posh
doing?
Panda.
Okay.
I'm doing great. I'm not. Well, I'm making a game. It's called The Meat, but it's basically a very, very quick start. Randomly genre slottable, like fantasy or magical girl or demon detective lawyer agency. It's got like 7 rules, but I'm working on that. I also, right now, I'm doing a bunch of RPG icons all the time. Not all the time, just so many. Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, I look forward to checking out your game at some point.
Only 10 people know about it because I force them to play all the time.
That's how you do.
Yeah. And last but not least is Spook, also known on the Discords as Wafflebean Prime. How are you?
Oh no, you've outed me as
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
I have to burn that username now. Now it's dead. Now the internet
Okay,
knows.
well,
Crime.
I apologize,
That's okay.
but on
That's
the
okay.
plus side, it still hasn't spread beyond about 5 people, maybe.
Hi, and I'm one of them as well. So, hi, I'm Spook. I like video games and non-video games. I'm also making a game. It's kind of like a fantasy battle version of the Hunger Games. There you go.
Very cool.
It's based off of the
Yes.
harp system, but trying to have harp be playable. Shout out to anyone who's ever played harp.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's a high action roleplay. It's like an easy version of an unplayable game called Rollmaster, but it's like still unplayable.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, actually, I have played that before.
No,
Ages
you
ago.
haven't, because it's unplayable.
Okay. Well, I think the version we actually played was the even less playable Rollmaster, and then I like looked through the books and had the harp version. But you know, it had really cool tables. So there's
It's
that.
got cool tables.
Yeah.
So like the big while of harp is you don't ever take like a number of damage. You take like wounds on a critical table. I'm a bit like Dark Heresy, and it handles magic really well with like the scaling of spells and all that kind of stuff. It's a cool game. I love it. I'm a nerd for harp. Shout out to harp.
I mean, charts is why I played Maid, so a good chart system will get me in every time.
Cool. Well, I guess what we're playing today, sort of has charts in that there's moves, and you're looking up a table for them and then making choices. But it's not quite the same as like a full like fumble chart or a crit chart where you can take out people's eyeballs and such. However,
Well, you say that.
I do.
Still in bed.
So, yeah, I do want to take a little bit of time before we jump right into like the meat of this, um, to talk some about what sort of campaign we want to do, and in this I want to make clear that like my position is sort of is just another participant, maybe facilitator, but I'm not making the final decision on these decisions of like content and the range between hard science fiction and science fantasy. It's we all get input on it.
Sure. I have another question. Since you're the creator of this game and you're presumably looking for feedback, how do you want to look for that feedback? Are you just going to watch how the game plays out on its own and just kind of be an observer of us and yourself as we're all playing it together? Or if the rules go wrong from how you imagine the game in your head at some point, will you jump in and tell us how we're
misinterpreting things?
Yeah, that's a good way of.
I guess that depends on how far things go off track. For the most part, I just want to see how things play out.
Okay.
But if you have a feeling that something is plunging up partway through, by all means, feel free to tell me right then rather than waiting to the end of the session. I will do a thing asking for critiques at the end of probably every session, but
okay, perfect.
But anytime is a good time.
Okay, that's absolutely excellent.
Okay. So I guess the first topic I want to bring up is content in that the sort of the default setting for the Eschaton is partially utopian, but with pockets of like every kind of barbarism. And because of that, it can easily lead to some like hot button issues, stuff like slavery, ethnic and gender oppression, capitalism, and like personal political ideology. So there's definitely like an X card. So if we come across something that anyone is uncomfortable with, we can back up and without like questions other than to make sure that we're all on the same page about the scope of what needs to be backed off from. Definitely no questions about why do you feel that way. So, with it in mind that there's freedom to X-card later, is there anything that jumps out to anybody as something that they just don't want in the game? Like,
child abuse.
Okay.
That's a big one. So we could just avoid most of that. And like the whole like, oh, the kids are used as like minors or something, like that's kind of okay, but not like other kinds of that.
Cool.
Perfect.
Good one.
Yeah.
over here, I found that I'm like on this particular issue, I'm getting better about talking about it, but I have a difficult time actually acting out arguments because then I can get a lot of damaged feelings from that and stuff like that because it's kind of emotionally tense to act out like an argument with someone and things like that. So that's an upfront thing with me.
Okay.
But I can sometimes do it, but not for very long or for very intense amounts of time.
Okay. So
not
Yeah.
debate, but like emotional arguments, or just like
Debate
any
is
kind of.
fine, probably. Extremely high-strung emotional arguments are less so because then things get
Sure.
messy and emotional and strange.
Okay. So yeah, definitely don't hesitate to say when we're getting towards that threshold.
Sure.
I think to some degree disagreements are gonna come up in character.
Mhm.
So it's hard to say, uh, you know, nothing even close to an argument. Um, but definitely, you know, definitely like pull the trigger early and don't feel, uh, don't hold back.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So is there anything else along those lines right now?
Spook, did you have anything that you want to say right off the bat, or
No, I don't really have anything that's off limits.
Okay.
marvelous?
Okay. So next up, I do want to talk a little bit about the the range between hard science fiction and full on like Star Wars esque science fantasy. Uh, like, do you want to be as like realistic as like the least technical player, and then is like comfortable with, and then strive to, or like full on strive to emulate real world physics as much as we can, and uh, you know,
Um, I don't know science very well. I know words, and I've seen lots of sci-fi movies that usually are not accurate. So if we could do like sci-fi movie science fiction, like where most of the science is pretty much accurate, but there's a bit of wiggle room.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Not something like it's like I'm a scientist. You misused this word. I'm like,
Oh no.
yeah, I don't. That's a game. I don't. Yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah, that's good for me. The only thing in that ballpark is I guess just more to do with the tone than like the I guess implementation of like how like I don't really care like how science works and like what is possible and all of that because obviously it's a game and it's fun and it's a story. Um, but I'm definitely interested in like the sort of scope that the sort of general theme of like transhumanism and sci-fi has to sort of explore things. So while I don't want it to be like hard sci-fi, I definitely like the idea of there being a sort of visceralness to the world and the people that inhabit it, or the universe, rather than you know what I mean.
The world of the universe. Yeah.
I think also some good stuff would be having these badass, almost abstract, like planet spacescapes, like on any given planet that people control. You can just look up at the sky and there's some weird, like unless you're on Earth, which we already know well enough, I want like on each habitable planet you look up into the sky and there's like some like amazing vista to behold.
Cool.
Like the sky is just half taken over by like a planet with rings and stuff like that.
Yeah, like things that gravitationally would not work, but look amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that could be like a little bit of the fudging. Like things still look like spectacular. It's space. It's about wide scopes and exploring what could be despite gravity.
I like that. Yeah.
And there's science. You can always be like, well, they scienced some science, and that's how it works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ring around that planet isn't asteroids, it's gravitational flux capacitors. That's not
They got force fields, they got anti-medubular higamadiggers. It's fine.
Yeah.
Dyson
That particle
rings.
fused a black hole sun.
Yeah.
To...
I got Stellaris recently, and all those Dyson rings.
Very nice.
Yeah. Channel the tachyon beam from the deflector of the gravitational singularity, reverse the time-space continue.
Like putting a banana in a tailpipe.
Exactly. It's as easy as that nowadays.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. So there are some specific elements that I want to talk a little bit about also. One of the things in the setting is something called the Mindscape, which is essentially the internet on steroids, and essentially anybody, any like autarch or citizen, unless they specifically are avoiding having this connection, doesn't need like an external device to access the Mindscape, and it can be used for communication at sort of instantaneous speed at essentially any distance. Now, whether or not this is achieved through like a technology so advanced that it resembles magic, or is like actual psionics, is up in the air. If you guys have a feeling one way or another.
I mean, both. Some people use
Yeah.
like psychics. Some people use technology.
Psychic tachyon particles.
Yeah,
Just
some
put 'em
people
both
stick
together.
a bug up their nose. It's
Mhm.
yeah, scope, variety. Why not both?
Okay, cool.
It's a big universe.
Okay.
Maybe it's like Verizon versus Sprint. Like some are on psionic network, some are on tachyon particles with the implants.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Like maybe certain planets have like a field that like once you land or once you're close enough, you're connected to the planet information network.
And it looks all different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then you only have 2 bars, and you're like, ah.
Yeah. Like I can send a vague impression of where I am, but they only get a Starbucks and not which Starbucks.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm in Seattle. If I don't mention it once, then I get kicked out of the city.
Okay, and sorry, I am.
I recognize your note-taking face. I understand this.
Okay, never mind. The next thing to talk about, I think, is just like the overall tone, political, horrific, romantic, philosophical, humorous. I mean, do you want to just see how that plays out, or is there a specific one that anyone wants to see?
I don't want to get trapped up in space battles. Like having them would be fun, but like having the core of the game being like this faction versus this faction on the space front of the edge of the nebula. it's cool to have that in the game, but I just don't want to like play like a mech
that
simulator.
Yeah, for sure.
I personally just got over a year of playing a lot of Blades in the Dark, and I've been designing Mortally Bankrupt, which is also another dark sort of fraught game. So I've been gravitating towards like Girl by Moonlight and other like sort of like lighter content. So having like a really like a sweeter, like goofier sort of game is good tone for me.
Okay.
So perhaps whimsy?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can do that.
I think I can.
So next up, pronouns. I think we've got like our personal pronouns sorted out, but I want to talk about them in the context of the game as well. In that, you know, one of the parts of the parts of the fiction is that people can you know, modify their bodies pretty, or have them modified pretty much on a whim, which I think would probably sort of deconstruct concepts of gender roles and gender behavior. But I don't want this to be. I don't want having that in place be just sort of a okay.
You don't want to assume that everybody is just going to go towards like this gender neutral sort of place. Like some people have preferences over like resleeving into male bodies, and other people have.
Well, I mean, it's possible that we have that that assumption. I guess I just don't want it to have it be sort of a thing where, okay, that's dealt with, we're dismissing it. More of a I want to like
Still have the opportunity to talk about it in game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, more of a do a little bit to you know, like in-game help break down those mental constructs rather than, you know, putting them in a box.
Okay.
Sure thing.
So if anybody has ideas on how that change might you know, affect meta society, I'm, you know, like all ears, and we can like incorporate it or figure it out as we go along.
I think there would still be a preference for some folks and cultures, even though it is like wide, you know, everything's accepted, to maintain those gender norms. Like Doctor Who and his preference for the male form. Like people just want to be more comfortable in a form that they're used to. And comfort and change are things that people deal with no matter what era you're in. Something
Could
like that.
On this note, can I get a check of who's read The Player of Games by Ian Banks?
Player of Games.
It's,
no. Okay. Wow.
It's been a couple years.
Sure. So that's like a really important work of sci-fi around the idea of gender and about how gender can work in societies where you can swap, or societies where there's one or more than two genders, or, you know, like all this kind of stuff. And definitely that's like a big like foundation for me in terms of how I imagine gender and sex in a sort of sci-fi setting. So yeah, if next time we play Red Player Games, you get spook points, because that book it's very dear to me. It's a wonderful book. It really yeah, very there's some horrible stuff in it though. Oh yeah, it's a tough read, definitely, but a good read.
Yeah.
I have a few of their
Nice.
books on my to-do, read, listen ones, and I add this to it.
Yeah, like on that subject, I think I'd also recommend I got the name of the series by Anne Leakey. Um, what she does is just makes the default female rather than male, and it sort of colors perceptions throughout the book. Another one that's really interesting is the book Two Like Lightning. I'm forgetting the author, where
Ada Palmer.
yeah, yeah, totally. Where uh, display where uh, gender as a sort of almost as a concept in general has fallen out of favor, and it's sort of risque to uh, fall into either a male or female role.
Okay.
Um,
So I don't know if it's affecting you, but we're getting a lot of like fan feedback from you, Brad. I think.
oh, is that? Let me mute myself and
See if that's.
see if we can. Okay.
Oh no, I still hear it.
Let me mute myself.
Oh, yeah, I think that might be the source.
I was muted when you were saying that, so I'm just guessing it's hashtag not me.
All right. So I don't know if
Fans
there's
everywhere.
anything you can do to address it. Possible if there's nothing straightforward. If you can go push to talk, that'd be awesome.
Maybe it's Zoom.
Could be.
Oh, does Zoom have push to talk? Oh, I love push to talk. Let me go to my settings.
But worst case scenario, I can there's I can at least filter it for putting it up on YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, next up, aliens. So in the default setting, the Eschaton is really huge, like trillions of worlds and millions of different sentient species. Um, and then the degree of interspecies integration varies wildly by region within a particular galaxy and within any particular world. And then by default, all the PCs are human or post-human, with that post-human category including a lot of stuff like people uploaded into synthetic bodies, into no body, possessing some form of like shared consciousness across many bodies, non-human biological bodies, or bodies composed of exotic material or phenomena, like hard light is mentioned a couple times in some of the like descriptors. So, do we want to just go with that, or does anyone like specifically want to play a PC alien, or does anybody feel like no, in this genre you should not have aliens?
It's a big universe.
Yeah, I mean it's possible
It's
to do
basically
that.
my response to a lot of things. Like even if we don't come across it every game, it still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like there being aliens as long as once again, it's more like a flavor thing for me, where I'd like them to really feel alien. Like,
Yeah.
for example, like on say like a show like Star Trek, basically everyone would be like a human, if that makes sense, because they're all basically, you know, like meta humans, if that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, real things like the tar monster is like that's the kind of thing, or like, you know, a giant nebulous gas monster, like that's the kind of like way I think of like an alien in this kind of setting. Whereas
So
like a
make-
dude with like a lion head, that's just a dude.
Yeah, it's like I got a thing in my forehead. I'm an alien.
Mm. Or spots that go all the way down. That one's from a
Yeah,
DS9, peeps.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why that's done in like television science fiction. It's like a budgetary thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it and you know, if we like all agreed to that idea just to as like simulating that you know, style of play, that'd be okay. But yeah, it's kind of a bugaboo of mine too. I'd rather see the aliens as you know, full on very alien in it unless there's you know, some sort of specific mention of they were you know, like precursors who helped the human race develop, or were developed from human DNA. So
because also humans get everywhere, so humans infect everything.
they're a virus.
Well, you should write that down. That seems like a really good, solid idea that nobody's.
Someone's never come up with before. Yeah.
Look it up.
With aliens, are most of them sentient enough that we can communicate with them, or are there many alien species that are so alien that we have no way of communicating with them or learning their language?
Well, I think by default, it's even with you know, aliens that are sentient but organized very differently. There's the ability to communicate to some degree just through the intermediation of the mindscape.
Mm.
Yeah, because
Okay.
that's definitely like the kind of thing that I mean as well. Because when I say like them to feel alien, I mean like culturally. Because obviously, like, you know, just simple stuff like, oh, we want resources and, you know, planets and that kind of stuff, for them to really have like a, you know, their like desires and needs, and just to be completely like, you know, they don't have music, just like real alien.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the idea of like a mass of creatures, like moving like a pod of fish or whales that they just are, and we
The dolphin people.
Yep.
like they could be made of energy or have physical form, or like only appear sometimes. Like there was a book, which I always forget the name of, where there was this creature that came out of like negative space and ate things and condensed it down into like a crystalline red gem and then expelled it. And they could never figure out like where they came from or what their purpose was or how to communicate with them. They just existed and they consumed. Like,
That's cool.
see if I can find it on.
I also like the idea that in their kind of neighborhoods in the mindscape is like used mainly for their own purposes, and when you go there, boy, it's another world.
Yeah. Like it's very alien.
Mhm. because it's the mindscape designed for them as well, and not for you. So things like just look very strange, and you kind of don't know where you are, and it's extremely
like your sense of time is
psychedelic.
messed up, and
And I think there should be like some degree of like translation error with that, where like we attribute certain ideas to like objects or colors or shapes, and so what we see and what they see in the mindscape are very different because we have such different, you know, because simple things like, you know, whether white and black is like the good or evil color, like even variates with like cultures on this dumb planet. So like then sort of taking that up to the nth degree, yeah, I think that what each race would see would be very different, or species, I suppose. I don't know. But
graphical representations that people like ascribe to stars and suns and things like that. Like to us, we have certain ways that we draw like stars and suns, and they have their own ways of drawing stars and suns, which incorporate like the other parts of the light spectrum and maybe things beyond, like on another axis than
and
the
of
light
course,
spectrum.
then it's the as well. What does a picture of a star or sun mean to them? It could be, you know, for us, it could be like the source of, you know, life and warmth and stuff. Whereas with them, the sun could mean like, you know, death and pain and you know,
or like that's where they hatch. Who knows?
Ooh,
and also
yeah.
like, and how do they see the sun? Like maybe they don't see on the same light spectrum that we do, and they see something totally different. Also, that book I was thinking of was just called The $1 Billion Boy. It was fun when I was a kid to read. It's got a lot of cool images, but I haven't read it in years, so it may be not great. So sci-fi, when you come back to it,
you never know.
Yeah.
Like my experience with Star Blazers as a kid. Oh my god, it's so good, and then I came back to it and I was like, oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, is there, that's all I had on my list for, like, pre-game things I wanted to definitely cover, but if there's anything else that, anybody feels like, should be talked about a bit before we get into character creation, by all means, shoot.
Is it going to be more physical sciences, or is this a science akin to magic situation? Where people have like bionic powers, like in those games nobody remembers, where they can like telekinesis or stuff like that, or is it like hard sciences?
So
how whimsical.
Yeah. So by default, there's not at this point a lot of rules for covering full on, what you might call magic. But I'd be I'd totally be open to exploring some of that, either through making custom moves as part of character advancement, or just using it as part of the fiction, like in like earlier conceptions of this setting, that there was full on or close to full on magic, in the sense of there was like a magical singularity as well as a technological one, in which spirits were used to get things done, as much or more often than technology. That has slowly been kind of cut out of the game, but it can totally be back in, without a lot of difficult changes. It's just part of it can just be part of the fiction.
I think we talked about just having it mostly be science. I just wasn't sure how far advanced science had gotten. Like, not quite the Numenera.
Yeah. Well, I think
You did say I did read about alternate dimension, like near alternative dimensions.
Mhm.
So I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, like yeah, unless that's problematic, they do in fact exist.
Okay.
Now, whether or not one can make whether or not alternate dimensions have like full-on magic, or one can use the interplay between one dimension and another to get effects that are similar to magic. I'm open to it, but it's not hard coded.
Okay.
I guess then the only thing on the sort of like general sci-fi topics is how people feel slash what the has already been established in terms of like religion, and obviously with like a lot of the stuff with like cloning and stuff, is there like an accepted galactic theory? Like, is the consensus, oh, there is no God, or is there like the sort of vacant soul kind of theory where if there is a vessel, soul comes in, and how it happens is a mystery, or is it still undecided amidst the galaxy? And do people have preference over whether there is a such thing as a soul or a God in this kind of setting?
I think I'm gonna like listen before I say anything.
I think it would be really funny if we completely figured out how the soul enters the body and how all of that works. Like,
that would solve
it's just
is
a
my
scientific
clone a
fact.
different person thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's actually souls. There's actually a wavelength that is your identity that
Mhm.
moves between these bodies, making it easy to say, oh, well, I'm so-and-so's clone. It was like, well, do you have their soul? And you're like, my other body has. So you're not that person, even if you have their memories. Like, a soul exists. I
Yeah.
keep doing this like it's a little thing, but
It's fine.
everyone's soul is like that's a big rat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the idea that there might be like a soul particle, and each soul particle vibrates at certain frequencies, and that's how you know whose soul is which. Whether
So there was this show. It was like, I'm not sure if it was Tales from the Crypt, but Travis Tritt was in one of these episodes, and he was experimented on because he was trying to find where the soul is, and they thought it was like a few vertebrae down, and you had to catch somebody at the edge of death, and they actually like plucked it out of a body at one point, and then Travis Tritt came back, and spoilers, sorry, but like having it be a physical or a transferable thing would solve a lot of the is my clone, like the existentialism of am I this person, or is this person a copy, or am I still me in this other form?
I'm kind of so like I like the idea that obviously a clone of you is not you and does not have your soul, but I think it would still have a soul, just a different soul, and that the act of sentience is the combustion, the driving factor of what makes souls. Sentience equals souls, and once again, I think as well, this could lead into, do our robot friends have souls? I'd like to think so, if they're sentient. Like for example, C-3PO doesn't have a soul because he's not really sentient, but R2-D2 blatantly has a soul. Like he engages and he has emotions and feelings and he's sentient, I mean, am I wrong? This makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could do like you can move your physical soul, but there's like every vessel has a soul.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that's sentient
is a citizen. If you're sentient, you're a citizen.
Yeah, that's all from me. That's all I got.
Yes. Well, okay. So there's a like technical definition of a citizen in the game.
When I said that, I was like, oh wait,
but yes, totally. I'm totally down with this perspective. Um,
Marvelous.
Yeah. So, uh, let's uh, uh, let's maybe slide into character creation.
So soon? We've only been playing for an hour.
I know, it's crazy. So, Spook, you had a pretty well-defined character concept that seemed pretty fucking awesome. Do you want to talk about that for a bit first, and then others can say what like playbooks and ideas they're leaning towards? But...
Yeah, sure. Uh, a fantastic guy on the internet called Sean T. Collins. He runs Boiled Leather. All leather must be boiled. He made the great point that all of the most interesting stories and shows are about people that kill people, with the exception being Mad Men that proves the rule. But other than that, all the best TV shows are about people that kill people. And so I sort of started off with there, went straight into the fighter class, went to the force commander, and with the whole thing of religion, my idea was basically just someone who's like in a weird, creepy, kind of insidious, sort of, I suppose, weird cult is how I would describe it, where they're trying to create this higher being. And I've always liked the idea that like religion is an invention of humanity, and I think it's that idea taken a step further, where it's like someone who's trying to invent a religion, but they're actually trying to invent the god to go with it. So I guess I like my character isn't the one who's going through transhumanism, but they're more trying to create something truly post-human, something wonderful and amazing. I was going to be really like dark and creepy and like just fucked up and violent, but given like that people are looking for a lighter one, I'm sort of like shifting it more to like a kind of like going for more of like a comedic idea of like how I view the character, but that's like the rough outline.
Awesome.
Nice.
So, Adam, a Dazer, have you had a chance to like look through the playbooks?
Not a lot.
Okay.
To be honest.
So,
to be
no problem.
totally
No problem.
honest.
So let me go over them a little bit. So first off, there's the citizen, which we've talked about a little bit, and yeah, that's the founder or leader of like a planetary colony. It's generally, I think, good to have one in any play group, just because it gives like a sense of
Setting.
yeah, a sense of setting. It creates at least a pole for things to rotate around.
Mm-hmm.
Although
Mm-hmm.
I think that it.
Cool, I'll take it.
Okay.
Well, no.
Oh, did you want to take it?
Well, it's the one I had read, and I was thinking of doing a cult that like synced up their memories every so often.
Okay,
like,
cool.
those, like,
Well,
leave the high. But unless you had an idea,
if you want to take it,
he can read through the books. I can.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Buy
ahead.
Tell you what,
something
yeah,
else.
why don't I go through the
Yeah.
the other
Well, like the
playbooks
first
a little
thing,
bit, and then yeah, and decide from there. Okay, so the next one is the composition, which ties into that syncing up of memories. It's a large group of people sharing a single personality and or set of memories. So with a composition, you can go like full on hive mind, where there's essentially just where both personality and memories are synced up, and each body is sort of just an appendage. The downside to that is that the powers that be in meta society really they want diversity, so it hurts your wuffy, your resources to do that. Alternatively, you can have just memories synced up, or just personality synced up. Next playbook is Regional Intelligence Director, and they are the local head of a intelligence agency that's at least like solar system wide, but it could be an intelligence agency that is in multiple solar systems, and you're just the head of this one. And they have some interesting moves about being able to look in on what other people are doing, and have having like agents in place where they need them. Spook is already playing a force commander that's head of like either a mercenary unit or a military order. And then the last one is committee chair. They're the chairperson of one of Meta Society's governmental committees, like they're sort of power brokers, and those committees are cover things like any one particular committee could be like the local like system local judiciary, or in charge of like resource allotment, or just in terms of like a union of local autarchs, that sort of thing.
Adasser, what are you thinking now?
Well,
is it the same thing?
No, because I like the idea of seeing when there's a community of shared memories, but there are like clusters of people, like a dozen at a time that have like their unit, and then they can go out and do things, and then they'll come back and like and while they're away, they're that individual unit. They're not part of the hive. So there can still be individualism, but in a like you're an individual, but you're of like a dozen or so people. Yeah, you're still connected. It's like hives within hives, sort of like a nesting arrangement, like a and like that idea. But what are you thinking?
The Citizen? That was the one that I wasn't super interested in. So I might do the Citizen, since
sure,
if nobody else wants to take it.
Yeah, because the things I was going to do with the Citizen, I can do with the composition.
What interests me in the Citizen is since I'm the founder or leader of a planetary colony, I can have my interesting vistas, because I can be like, and I picked the planet with the best and weirdest view of space. And then I can just go on Pinterest and yeah, exactly. I can just go on Pinterest and search space pictures, like fantasy space pictures, and then be like, this is what the sky looks like.
Like two nebulas crashing into each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Fighting.
Yeah.
And check out that ring.
That's mine. That's my planet.
I had a smaller planetoid specifically broken up to form it. Isn't it beautiful?
They all live here now.
It's really good.
There's so much gentrification location in this solar system.
I love it. Yeah.
So cool. So on Roll20, I'm gonna refresh it, but there should be a listing of characters that are a listing of characters that everybody can access. There's one that's like the Citizen Playbook character sheet, then Composition Playbook character sheet. So just if you just open those up, the bio and info section is a rundown of how to create the character, and we'll go through that step by step. The character sheet tab has an actual, I guess you could call it a working character sheet. It's fairly basic. It doesn't calculate things for you based off of what playbook you are, but you can like set it up so that you just click on the button by a move, and and anything that you need to add has already been added in, and you don't have to worry about that.
Neat.
So, it sounds like we all have made like a solid
Playbook.
choice on playbooks.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Next up is picking your look, and of course you can change this essentially on a whim.
If only.
And it's sort of like the standard Powered by the Apocalypse thing of you can choose a thing off the list, or if you have something specific that you want in one of those slots of gender, body, eyes, or clothes, go for it.
Gender, yes.
Sure. I didn't ask. Has everybody played a Powered by the Apocalypse game before?
I have played several of them.
Yes. Played and watched.
No. I
Okay.
mean, I'm very aware of it. I've just never actually, played
Here's your
one.
chance.
I ran a version of Shadowrun using the Breakers PTO thing once. So I get the basic, 7 to 9 is middle, the other sides are the other sides. So yeah, I'm we Gucci.
Okay, cool. Yeah, in any case, it wouldn't be. It's not a bad thing that you haven't. It's more of a. I want to. I wanted to get a clear idea of what needs explained, what doesn't.
Mhm. It's also good to know who is like in that space and who isn't, because then you'll know like people who haven't played Apocalypse World don't understand what taking something forward means, or things like
Failing
that.
forward is something I've brought into all of my games now. It's so
Mhm.
good.
So let me know when you've.
So can I just take these? Like, can I take the Citizen Playbook character sheet? Just like grab it.
Grab it. It's yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I will rename it to be.
Do you? I know it might be a little early for your plan, but if we take a little break now so we could read over our character sheets. I don't know how you do breaks though, so it's up to you.
So usually I wind up just doing a single break in the middle, but there are definitely upsides to taking breaks after like every hour. I'm totally fine with taking one now.
Because I know we're going until 7, right? Or are they like an hour and 45 minutes from now? So
Yeah.
I'm very bad at time.
So yeah, I'd like to go till about 7.
Mhm.
I'm open to going like as much as an hour later than that, but if you know if there are schedule
This week I can,
if
but
anybody has
next
like
week,
a hard out that
Yeah.
at 7, that's totally fine.
yeah. Next week I'm starting back up with D&D again. So
Perfect.
Okay,
I
so
would be good to take a break now.
so you can read. Otherwise, it's like
On-screen reading.
Dead air. Okay.
Cool. Is it coffee o'clock then?
it's T30.
I mean, it's always.
Nice.
So yeah, we will be back shortly. Please stick around.